Tongo! Although I don't think you actually have to shout Tongo, unlike when you play Dabo. This card game, like Dabo, which I covered last week, was invented by the Ferengi, and done with the purpose of wagering latinum slips, strips and bars. Unlike Dabo, which is basically space roulette, Tongo is more like poker, although it still possesses a specialised play wheel and dice? Just as Dabo, however, the game was designed to be something played in the background where you could easily identify the flow of the game, while there was no actual set rules on how to play. However, unlike poker, the Tongo card game has far more nuanced rules and a whole bunch of terminology when making wagers alongside considering the composition of the cards in the player's hand. This made playing Tongo a mixture of randomness, bluffing, strategy, and reading exchange values and a bunch of stuff. People like Quark go on to say that the game is too complex for a computer to effectively master, probably when combined with the need to bluff and things. The goal was to accumulate a better hand than the opponents, and if it drew a match with the rolled dice, you could win. Sounds simple in principle, but as there was no rule set, the rest was made up on the fly, including the nature of wagers and the types of hand that the player could accumulate. The actions a player could take were to confront, which basically seems to call out the other players to end the round, retreat, which is probably the equivalent of a fold, where you withdraw yourself from a game in order to mitigate your losses. And there were also the actions to acquire and evade. First, the number of players is decided, and they bring a pile of value to the table and prepare it for play. The amount entered into the game is set for every player to make a level starting field. If a player wants to increase their starting amount, they can do so from their own funds at a later time during gameplay. This was called a conversion of funds, and an action to be taken on your turn. Once the players are established and the value of Latinum set, the cards are dealt to the players from two decks of differing shapes, circle cards and rectangles. Play is conducted around a wheel divided up into 8 sections that can spin, and it has the pot in the middle that contains the bets from all the players. The circle cards are dealt to the player's hand, while the rectangles are placed on the table before the players, some face down, some face up. Both of these sets of cards, the ones in the hand and before the player on the table, are used in constructing the player's hand, like in blackjack or poker. Players then took turns to take an action on their turn, such as acquire, which was used to exchange a card or reveal one of the face down ones on the table. But in order to do this, the player had to add to the pot in the middle before selling at the end of their turn to state the ante for the next player. Exchanging allows for a player to switch out a card in their hand with another, and again this requires a player to add to the pot. In fact, it's safe to assume that every action you wanted to take you needed to buy for. Evading is to simply avoid your turn, which could be useful if you don't want to alter your hand or didn't wish to add any more action funds to the pot. Evading ends the turn without setting a new sell price for the next player, however, resetting a potentially escalating wager. Evading is therefore a way to play it safe by keeping the bets low and minimising your contribution to the pot, but you cannot build your hand either. At the end of your turn, you spin the wheel, which changes the rectangle cards in front of everyone, unless it comes to rest at the same position, I guess, and therefore the potential hands, either aiding or hindering a player's full hand. I imagine this would be a good time to attempt to read another player, because if there was a certain setup from the revealed rectangle cards that would benefit a player, inexperienced players may track those desired cards as the wheel spins, or show a tell if it comes to a stop before them. These actions continue around the wheel, the value in the pot building from player to player until a player is ready to confront, when they feel they have the winning hand, made from their held circle cards and the squares on the table immediately before them. We don't know the full list of available hand combinations for 2 reasons. Firstly, it was all made up on the fly, and secondly, the cards themselves are a specific Tongo deck, so a 100% direct 52 card deck to a Tongo translation is not really possible. Although I do wonder what the suits and history would be behind a Ferengi deck of cards. A king would be a Nagus, surely. What we do know is that the potential hands are named after various levels of business terminology, with a full monopoly being the highest possible hand, akin to a royal flush. So, there is the basics of how to play Tongo. It certainly has all the layouts for a potentially playable game, even though watching it unfold on screen doesn't always make it seem so. It is basically space poker, but with an extra layer of added randomness caused by the wheel and the shifting hands. In terms of tactics, you have the bluffing and hand building of poker, as well as the ability to reset the wagers with actions like evade. Because a player's hand is made up of what is literally in their hand as well as on the table before them, a viable tactic might be to reveal as many cards on the table as possible and make a hand that matches up with as many of them as possible so that you stand a better chance of a strong confrontation. Or you could hedge all your bets on a single hand and wait for the table cards you need to wind up in front of you. Huh? What about the dice? What dice? There are no dice in Tongo. Ah, damn it, unless... in order to simulate the randomness of spinning without the Tongo wheel, you could roll a dice and rotate the rectangle cards set clockwise that amount. That's a stretch, isn't it? I have no idea where the dice come in. In researching for this video, I ended up visiting all corners of the internet, but I feel I do need to give a couple of shoutouts, including Beard vs Geek's video on how to play, where he also covers the idea of indexing and those sorts of other actions that a player can perform. And there is a conversion of the game into an Earth-based deck that has been created and can be found easily enough by a quick Google search. I'm not going to cover how to play a real version of it here, and I wouldn't play for money, but we do see stand-in discs used as Monopoly money at times, so I'd probably play Tongo like that for fun. Thanks for watching this quick breakdown of a game that's, as depicted on screen, couldn't work without some serious finagling. Thanks again, I've been Rick and I'll see you later. Goodbye.